God walks with his people. This is the theme for the 2024 World Day of the Migrant and Refugee in Jerusalem Holy Mass presided over by Monsignor Rafik Nahra. The community of the first Filipino martyr has turned 30. Joy and celebration in the Ratisbon Monastery. The message of love and mercy embodied by St. Vincent de Paul lives on through the service of the Sisters of Charity of Bethlehem. Presented in Bologna, the new book interview by Roberto Cetera, journalist of the Osservatore Romano, and Fra Francesco Patton, Custos of the Holy Land. The Feast of St. Francis in Jerusalem. In times of war and conflict, live the spirituality of trust and fraternity to the full. Focusing on the synodal dimension allows the Church to rediscover its itinerant nature as the people of God on a journey through history, as a pilgrim and also as an immigrant to the Kingdom of Heaven. These are the words of Pope Francis on the occasion of the World Migrant and Refugee Day 2024. The title of the Pope's letter is God Walks with His People. This anniversary took the form of a solemn Mass celebrated on September the 28th in the hall of the Notre Dame Centre in Jerusalem, and presided over by Monsignor Rafik Nahra, Patriarchal Vicar of Galilee and Israel, which was attended by many immigrants and refugees.
This day annually is a day when different migrant communities, which are spread all over Israel, try to come together to celebrate unity in diversity.
Unity and diversity are reflected with enthusiasm and joy in the prayers, songs and hymns to the Lord in the various languages of the peoples of Asia, Africa and Europe, sometimes recalling Isaiah's prophecy of the reconciliation of nations, at other times recalling the scenes of the Pentecost when God promises and offers peace, while fierce wars rage throughout the region, devouring both green and barren land.
The church is my house, so I feel like a family. My family stays back in India. So when I come here, I feel like our own people.
The biggest challenge for immigrants and refugees is finding jobs and livelihoods, and most of them work in the care sector or domestic work.
What we get paid here, it's more than what we get paid in India.
I am now cleaning houses to give a good life for my family, to help my family, my parents.
Is a test of the authenticity.
Another challenge for immigrants is how they are viewed by others. In this regard, Bishop Rafik Nahra said in his homily that how foreigners are treated depends on the human quality of each individual. It is a test of humanity and faith, he said. Since 2018, when Pope Francis talks about immigration, he always uses 4 verbs: welcome, protect, assist, and integrate. We are encouraged to adopt these verbs as often as possible. But to hear that the Lord is walking with them is a great comfort to immigrants.
Perhaps still unknown. We're just waiting for an opportunity.
And I think that's the most consoling thing we can think of. In all our difficulties and challenges, God is walking with us. And in turn, he says,
Yeah, God take care of me every day, each and every time, every second.
I feel that God accompanied me in every little things in my life. He is my savior, my protector, and everything. All my life, I surrendered to Him.
As immigrants face life's challenges, we must remember that Christ is the one who knocks on our door as a stranger and a hungry person.
And remain with you forever.
On Sunday, September the 29th, at the Ratisbon Monastery in Jerusalem, the Filipino community of San Lorenzo Ruiz gathered to celebrate its 30th anniversary.
San Lorenzo Ruiz is the first martyr in the Philippines, and we commemorate the feast day today. And here people are gathered for the celebration, for the Mass, for the prayer, and for the program. They showcase their cultural dances and singing and presentation.
Every Sunday, about 150 people come here to attend Mass and other activities. They also seek spiritual help to grow in faith and fraternity in the company of peers.
We are here to join our people with their joys and with their sorrows. No? The nature of our life here is much different from ordinary churches, especially in the Philippines. And it is a challenging for us as priests to administer people who are facing stress and pain and suffering each day. So with God's help, we know that we can sustain this kind of ministry, especially with the Filipino migrants here in Jerusalem.
Women's presence in different charisms and ministries also makes itself felt in the community.
And it was commemorated of San Lorenzo Ruiz because he is also an overseas worker, and it represents the heart of the Filipino because of her martyrdom. We are so happy with the people here around because Filipinos are always welcoming, warm-hearted, generous, happy, always bringing our smile.
And me only 3 years joining this community, it was a wonderful experience because the ex-priest in charge, Father Ramel Poquita CP, who has been transferred to the Philippines, asked me 3 years ago to accompany this community, as a sister and as a woman, since the members majority are women. So he feels the need of the presence of the sister in the community, to be with them, to listen. Hopefully I can be a good listener for them. So, and also we do the formation for the lectors, the altar servers, choirs, and other activities and feasts of which the Filipinos in the Philippines celebrate.
Father Matthew Coutinho, a Salesian from Don Bosco, is the current patriarchal vicar for migrants and asylum seekers in Israel, tells that there are communities like this throughout Israel. These are made up of Filipinos, Indians, Senegalese, Africans, Ethiopians, and other backgrounds who have come to improve their lives and those of their families. But their presence also contributes to evangelization with the witness of faith.
The first thing that we often find is that today's evangelization in this land, bringing Jesus, is through the presence of good Catholics. And many people in society here really see Jesus for the first time in the faces of those who take care of the elderly people in their homes. But also, here, in their presence here, they are bringing the presence of Christ in this land. And at this time of great division, we hope that this community will be a sign of unity and peace.
The message of love and mercy embodied by St. Vincent de Paul lives through the service of the Sisters of Charity in Bethlehem.
منصور بيقلنا المحبة هي نار وهالنار.
St. Vincent taught us that love is a fire and that this fire must spread and never go out. I pray that a fire may burn within each of us and ignite a spirit of love for all the poor and marginalized.
لكل إنسان بردان، لكل إنسان فقير محتاج له.
Their warm home that is a refuge for broken hearts and vulnerable souls, the Sisters of Charity of St. Vincent take in orphans and give them what they have lost since birth: love, care, and security.
موجودين الرهبات من سنة 1884 ونحن ماشيين على الخطى.
We are following in the footsteps of the nuns who have come to this convent since 1884 and brought their message and life here. Children are life and soul. It was decided that I would move here. I relive my childhood with these children because they are love, joy, and smiles. This is a very important message. We are living our motherhood with these children.
الحب، هن الفرح، هن البسمة، رسالة كتير مهمة، يعني بنعيش الأمومة حتى مع الأطفال. أكتر شيء بتأثر لما الطفل بده ينام.
I am very moved when children go to sleep because it is the mother who gives affection to the child. When I hear children call me mother,
بيناديلنا ماما، يعني هذا هي مؤثر يعني.
I get very emotional and I have to give a lot because these children are our children and brothers.
نحن هدول أولادنا، أخوتنا.
Saint Vincent de Paul, the father of the poor, lived in a time of great social and economic inequality, but he saw in the poor and marginalized the suffering face of Christ. To mark this anniversary, the Sisters of Charity of St. Vincent celebrated a solemn Mass on September the 28th. It was presided over by Father Kaklil Marun in the presence of a large number of city residents.
بيقول يسوع كنت جائعا فأطعمتموني.
Jesus says, I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was naked and in prison. You clothed me and visited me. We are in times of war and hardship, especially in the city of Bethlehem. This isolated and deserted area always needs help. We need mutual solidarity. St. Vincent asks us to open our doors and help in any way we can.
نفتح بوابنا، نطلع نساعد شو فينا نساعد.
The occasion reminds us to reflect on the call of each of us to be a bridge between heaven and earth, following the example of St. Vincent, and to live the message of love with boundless generosity.
أنا بدعو كل المجتمع الفلسطيني، بدعو كل المجتمع المحلي.
My appeal is to the entire Palestinian community, as well as the entire local community in all its forms, to support this institution. These children are our children. We need to stand by them, help them, and make sure that this home remains standing. 50 children need services, medical care, assistance, and education. They need small places where they can live their lives normally. All this is provided to the marginalized Palestinian child by this home, so small and yet so big.
هالطفل الفلسطيني اللي ما إله حد تاني.
On the occasion of the Franciscan Festival, the new book interview by Roberto Cetera of Osservatore Romano and Brother Francesco Patton, Custos of the Holy Land, was presented in Bologna. In this long dialogue, the Custos traces back the joys and trials of 8 long years spent in the service of what St. Francis of Assisi called Pearl of the Missions of the Order.
8 anni che sono stati per me una sorpresa, perché 8 anni fa io non pensavo di andare a Gerusalemme.
8 years that have been a surprise for me, because 8 years ago I didn't think I would go to Jerusalem. 8 years that I lived with the spirit of pilgrimage in the sense that I left trusting, and then I was also able to make a real pilgrimage, which was related to the holy places, because being us friars Custos of the holy places, we have this privilege of being able to celebrate in the places that are the places of the gospel, the places that tell the mystery of the incarnation, the life of Jesus, his passion, death and resurrection for us, but also a pilgrimage in a broader sense, because it was for me an opportunity to meet new cultures, new religions, and also to meet so many experiences of suffering and drama that the whole Middle East, not only the Holy Land, brings.
Direi di sofferenza e di dramma che tutto il Medio Oriente, non solo la Terra Santa, porta in sé.
The book will be released in January by Terra Santa Editions, with a preface by Pope Francis and Brother Massimo Fusarelli, Minister General of the Friars Minor. The universality of the figure of St. Francis makes him familiar in every church in the Holy Land. His own Francis, a man in love with Christ, centered his spiritual experience in the contemplation of the crib and Calvary. In his body he received the signs of the Passion. In him, as in the greatest mystics of the Church, the harmony with the cosmos expressed in the Canticle of Creatures is recalled. On the 4th of October, in all the Franciscan fraternities, their founder is honoured with a celebration of the Transitus at the end of solemn vespers on the eve of the feast, and then the holy masses of the feast day, which are always well attended by the faithful. In Jerusalem, in the Church of the Most Holy Saviour, Brother Francesco Patton, Custos of the Holy Land, presided over the solemn celebration of the Transitus. In his homily, Brother Patton emphasized the person of Jesus, who lived as a pilgrim and stranger in this land, so that Francis and the friars followed his example. Saint Francis lived his whole life as a transit, that is, as a passage. I would say even more, he lived his whole life as a pilgrimage. So much so that one of the definitions he likes to give of our life is that we must be like pilgrims and strangers in this world. This means that our life must be one in which we trust the Father above all. We live in an absolutely essential way. We go out to meet others in a trusting and begging way, and in the end, when it is also time to close our eyes, we know how to place our life entirely in the hands of the Father, like Christ on the cross.
Nelle mani del Padre come il Cristo in croce.
During the liturgy, the temporarily professed renewed their promises. Young people came from many parts of the world, attracted by the life of St. Francis, both for his way of giving himself to God in a spirit of gratitude and for his ability to leave everything and strip himself, having only God as his Father.
Since
I was a child, I have received Christian values from my family, my parents, my grandparents. I always had the desire to be an acolyte. Then I thought how I could serve God more deeply. And so when I grew up, I went on a mission together with a Franciscan priest I met in my homeland. And so I liked to follow this way of life.
E così mi è piaciuto seguire in questo stile di vita.
Leggendo qualche scritti di San Francesco.
Reading a few pages of St. Francis, I stopped where he stripped himself before his father and then the bishop to give up everything he had, and that the only father he has now is God. There it threw me, because if a young man like St. Francis, who had a rich father, did this for the Lord to follow Jesus, so who am I? And from there I had this feeling of asking to also be like the Franciscans, to follow Jesus through St. Francis.
Seguire Gesù attraverso San Francesco.
The wish I make is precisely to take on this way of life of St. Francis. I think also in a context like the one in which we find ourselves strongly marked by conflict, by war. It is easy for one to get caught up in fear, discouragement, negative feelings, but if one lives with a pilgrim's spirit, even in a situation like the one we experience, one is at peace, one is serene. I know that my life is in God's hands.
Io so che la mia vita è nelle mani di Dio.
A very touching moment is the reading of the Transit of St. Francis with the words and gestures made on that evening at the convent of the Porziuncola in Assisi. On the 4th of October, the day of the feast, once again gathered in the church, as is tradition, one Dominican priest presides at the Eucharist, Prior Father Martin Sadzak, and another gives the homily, Father Olivier Poquillon, a reminder of the relationship between St. Dominic and St. Francis, both founders of the mendicant orders and also dedicated to preaching, proclaiming and witnessing the gospel.
Il fatto che viene raccontato in alcune delle biografie di una idea.
The fact that they have told you in some of the biographies of an initial idea almost to merge the two orders, which in fact Francis does not want because he knows that the charisms are different. But this has led to this tradition of exchanging the presidency and preaching on the day of our respective patron saints. Then at the end of the meal we sing a refrain recalling what one and the other taught us in terms of apostolic commitment and also seraphic zeal.
Dal punto di vista dell'impegno apostolico e anche dal punto di vista, potremmo dire, dello zelo serafico.
In this time and context in which we find ourselves, let us ask St. Francis for the grace to live the spirituality of trust and fraternity to the full, following in the footsteps of Christ and his gospel, aware of being a small flock daring to live as pilgrims and strangers in the possibility of glimpsing God's dream of fraternity and peace. On the 3rd of September in the Church of St. Saviour in Jerusalem, teachers, students and auxiliary staff participated in the opening Mass of the new academic year. Brother Rosario Pierri, Dean of the Studium Biblicum Franciscanum, presided at the Eucharist. Join us on the 7th of October 2024 on a day of fasting, penance and prayer for the Holy Land, asking the merciful Father and God of all consolation for our desire for peace and reconciliation. Open yourself to a gesture of solidarity and support the mission of the Custody of the Holy Land. The Christian Media Center spreads the good news of Jesus by making known to the world the spirituality of the holy places and the lives of the Christians who live here. Your contribution will help us bring the proclamation of the risen Lord, the most urgent of all, to men and women of every language and nation. To help us concretely, open the QR code. Your choice makes a difference.